Our last presenter is Matthew Gendron. Matthew is a second-year graduate student at SFU's Counseling Psychology program. His research assumes a qualitative approach to understanding the process of queer male couples' sexual communication. Matthew holds a BA in psychology, during which he engaged in quantitative research that used observational coding of heterosexual couples, heterosexual couples' conflict interactions to determine the effect of communications on sexual satisfaction. He also contributed to the development of global rating system aimed at measuring behaviors in relationships. Matthew's current work builds on his prior research exploring how sexual communication shapes queer male relationships. Welcome, Matthew.
Now I get to play around with this, see how this works. Are they stored somewhere?
Oh, yeah.
Should be at the bottom.
Which one was yours? That one.
Yeah.
Why is it not coming? Oh, there it is.
So we're going into
coming up there
presenter view.
Where's that up here?
Sorry.
Yeah,
It's on top on the top left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Top left?
Top left, yeah. It's like the one with like the...
This end?
Coming up.
If you could just jump.
I'm usually technologically illiterate, so let's just go with that. This one right here.
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, it did.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Cool.
Okay. So thank you. My name is Matthew, and I'm going to be presenting on some trends that I found when conducting my lit review for my master's thesis in the counseling psychology program here at SFU. I don't have any fun data or quotes to share with you just yet, but instead I'm going to be focusing on some of the themes of heteronormativity and restrictive representation that I found when conducting my literature review. So I'm pretty early in the process. If you have any questions or insights that would be helpful for me, I'd really appreciate it towards the end. So I thought I'd start just by giving you my current research question, which seems to change a little bit every week. But I'm currently asking, how are meanings of pleasure and intimacy shaped, sorry, this is not showing up, but shaped through the process of sexual communication in queer male relationships? So to start off, I thought I'd just orient you all to the broad findings of the couples communication literature in gay male couples. Or maybe I won't. We might be done. Sorry, y'all.
What did we do last time?
I just clicked that from the beginning, like on the
That's
slideshow.
what I did too, and it was fast.
Yeah, it worked for me too. Just, yeah,
Sorry,
from the
I'm gonna
beginning,
try
like
this.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right there. No.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
No?
Maybe go back to the first slide and then try it. I think
This is saying resume.
They have a
slideshow.
weird setup on the. What did you click on before?
I don't know. No?
But what did you click on down here? Which one of these ones did you click on down here? Maybe that was it.
Can I just close it down? Oh,
Oh, that's what it was. There we go. Thank you.
we got it. Okay.
Nothing about technology.
You're doing great. So some general findings. Psychologically intimate communication is predictive of relationship satisfaction in gay and straight couples. Open communication maintains closeness. This was from data from gay couples that had been together for many decades, and they were reflecting on why they think that their relationship had lasted so long. They said communication was an important part in that. And also relationship dissatisfaction is highly correlated with frequency of arguing. This was about power, intimacy, different themes. All this to say, you know, it's pretty intuitive. Couples that communicate well fare well. We like communicating well with our partners. It's something we value in our relationships. Not surprising. This quote, in a relationship when communication starts to fade, everything else follows. I pulled this from Pinterest. This was on, there was a nice landscape photo and it was over top. There's a nice filter over top of it. We generally like good communication in our relationships. Less is known about sexual communication, which is what the specific angle of my research is. However, when I scanned the literature, there's not a ton of literature on sexual communication, so I had to broaden it. So I'm going to be reporting on sexual communication as well as just general communication in my talk today. So first off, the main thing that I found is that research on couples communication generally focuses on heterosexual couples. The little bit amount of research that does focus or include gay couples is mostly through these comparative studies. So these are studies in which gay couples communication is assessed for the purpose of comparing it to heterosexual couples communication. Obviously, this is problematic in that it upholds heteronormativity, suggesting that gay couples communication is most valued and perhaps most valid when compared to straight couples communication. So although problematic, it does provide a little bit of empirical research on the topic. So I'm just going to speak to it very briefly. So these studies generally find one of two patterns, one being this idea that it's one and the same. So gay couples and heterosexual couples resolve conflict with similar effectiveness. They also fall into the same problematic arguing traps. And they also seem to argue about the same things. So there's a fair amount of research that supports this notion that there's virtually no difference between how gay and straight couples communicate. Some other findings suggest that gay couples actually resolve conflict more effectively than heterosexual couples. So we do have that. However, these findings clearly contradict one another, suggesting that there is a lack of consensus in the literature. So given that I'm on this research panel, I thought I would speak to why I think these discrepant findings might be coming up. So really important to note, all of the comparative research that generally compares gay and straight couples uses quantitative methods, specifically methods and measures that have been developed and normed for use with heterosexual couples, and then just later used with gay couples, and then comparing the two. So for me, this is problematic, as these measures may be insensitive to important differences that do exist between gay and straight couples. I'm going to make a big case for qualitative approaches towards the end of and I think that it's already been made, but just important to highlight here that the methodological approach may have influenced the insignificant differences found in these types of studies. So what about the research that does find a difference? So some scholars have hypothesized that gay and lesbian couples may value equality to a greater extent, and that damaging hierarchical power imbalances that lead to really problematic communication are less prevalent in these same-sex couples. So there's a little bit of research that supports this idea. So in response to open-ended questionnaire items, 18 participants of partnered same-sex relationships expressed pride in their partnership's equal distribution of power, labor, and roles. They also suggested that they were able to communicate more effectively and understand one another better due to their shared experience of gender and what they called a greater sense of friendship in their relationship. So here some indications of important differences are brought to light. In particular, experiences of equality seem to promote effective communication in a way that differs from straight couples. And for me, what's important is that these differences came from responses to open-ended questionnaire items. For me, this further supports the value of using qualitative approaches to this work to understand the complexity of really this understudied area of research. It may just be that there are important aspects of gay couples' communication that need to be explored a little bit more qualitatively before they can be assessed quantitatively. And I think certainly if and when they get to a place when they are able to be assessed quantitatively, that we use measures that have been developed and normed specifically for gay couples. So like I said at the beginning, I'm looking specifically at sexual communication. A few things came up when I looked into this part of the literature. First off, there were much more studies that looked at gay couples without comparing them to straight couples. You know, this is promising, as I just made the argument that this would not uphold heteronormativity in the same way. Further, there was a real big focus on open relationships. And again, this was like exciting for me. You know, it's not only are gay couples included, but these different types of gay couples that depart from this like heterosexual monogamy script that we're faced with all the time. This was promising for me. However, the more and more I read, I became aware of just how restricted in scope this area of research was, in that it almost solely focused on the risk of transmitting HIV from an HIV-positive casual sex partner to the established main partnership. So I want to emphasize that I think this work is very valuable, and I'm not saying it needs to stop by any means. I was just noticing a big absence of attention to issues of pleasure and intimacy. However, since the literature on gay male couples sexual communication almost solely comes from this open relationship literature, I'm going to address some broad findings and then talk more about the restricted focus of the research approaches. So this literature looks at how gay male couples utilize sexual communication to set boundaries and rules regarding their open relationships. These are sometimes referred to as sexual agreements in the literature. And although not perfect, whether or not these boundaries are honored or broken can provide some insight into what may make for effective and ineffective sexual communication. It's not perfect. So in couples in which the sexual agreements were honored, these were often committed, communicative, and trusting relationships. Also, securely attached men reported the highest levels of sexual communication. And in relationships in which the agreements were broken, these were partnerships characterized by avoidant communication styles or discrepant communication styles. So if one partner was very approached and very willing to have these conversations, but the other one was not, this still led to broken agreements pretty often. Avoidant attachment in partner gay men is also highly associated with number of casual unprotected anal sex partners. And those that found it difficult to discuss issues of sex with their partner experienced a greater likelihood of breaking their sexual agreements. So this is all quantitative work reported here. And it does provide, to a certain extent, some insight into some characteristics of effective and ineffective communication, potentially. However, a couple key qualitative studies really brought out some interesting information that really revealed the restricted focus of the literature for me. So, as I mentioned before, this research looks generally at, it takes an angle that looks at the risk of transmitting HIV from a casual sex partner back into the partnership. And some qualitative data did show that sexual safety was an area of concern for their participants. So LaSala interviewed 65 coupled gay men and found that all but 2 of the men in openly non-monogamous relationships reported that they agreed to engage only in safer sex with their outside partners. So these findings clearly support the HIV risk angle of the literature. However, other qualitative data suggests that HIV prevention isn't a common concern when couples are establishing these sexual agreements through their sexual communication. So semi-structured interviews were conducted with each partner in 39 gay male couples to better understand how sexual agreements affect relationships. So responses were coded for theme, revealing that HIV rarely appeared in the participants' discussions of their agreements, and when it did, it was usually in the context of a reported benefit to having an agreement. So these benefits included increasing sexual pleasure, facilitating trust, setting boundaries, and bolstering relationship satisfaction. Some couples felt increased vigor and excitement, while others derived physical and emotional intimacy from their agreements, making sex between the primary partners more intimate. So even LaSala's participants, the ones reported above, reported positive outcomes in regards to having sexual agreements established through sexual communication. So one participant stated, "We may find other sexual needs outside of the relationship, and by discussing it, we can bring those techniques or ideas into our own relationship." So clearly, communicating about sex provides benefits beyond HIV prevention for gay male couples. And given that the majority of the research on gay couples' sexual communication comes from this research on open relationships and sexual agreements, it was disconcerting for me that the research largely ignored these positive implications on pleasure and intimacy. Again, the HIV prevention angle provides really valuable and important work. However, I believe research questions and analyses can be broadened to allow for more consideration of pleasure and intimacy in gay male couples' sexual conversations. So I aim to address that gap in my work. And just to summarize the themes that I've been talking about, as well as ways that I plan to combat these concerns with my own research design. As I said, I haven't collected data yet. So these are my ideas moving forward. I'm writing up my methods chapter right now. So first, I talked about the potential harm of comparative studies and how they uphold heteronormativity and suggest that gay couples' communication is only valid when it's compared to straight couples. I plan to combat this by specifically looking at queer male couples living in the Vancouver area, and their data will not be compared to heterosexual couples, really centering their voices and not imposing a heteronormative framework on their experience. Again, I talked about heteronormative methods that have been developed for use with straight couples, but then just used with gay couples, and how this is likely insensitive to important differences that do exist. So I am combating this using a qualitative design. LaSala argues that research with LGBT participants allows for rich descriptions of complex phenomena that can challenge existing theories that have been established through heteronormative theorizing. So using qualitative work not only provides these really rich descriptions of what gay sexual communication is like, it also can combat what's been done already through heteronormative theorizing. Specifically, I'll be using the qualitative action project method, which is largely developed by UBC's Richard Young and his colleagues to better understand the meaning that sexual communication plays in gay male relationships. So it uses contextual action theory, phenomenological and hermeneutic approaches to understand the subjective meanings of partners engaging in the joint action of communication. And finally, I talked about the restricted focus of the literature. So some studies have used qualitative designs, and they have only used gay couples, but their research questions were really focused in on that HIV prevention angle that I was talking about. Yeah, I'm planning to combat this by asking a research question and looking into an area that really attends to the largely neglected area of pleasure and intimacy through sexual communication in the literature. So again, my current research question, how are meanings of pleasure and intimacy shaped through the process of sexual communication in queer male relationships? I'm hoping that can access some of it. It's super complicated and I need to clean it up a bit, and I'm really considering just shifting it a bit, maybe integrating the work of the iconic Salt and Peppa in just saying, let's talk about sex. Thank you. That's all I want.
Thank you very much. We have time for a few quick questions.
I was wondering how you would take into account like temporality, like because so much of queer relationships, especially for younger or people who are earlier in their sexual coming out, to me it just seems, I wonder how you will account for that, for the experience of coming out, of it, discovering, of, you know, trying new things, which is quite often a queer sort of coming of age thing that is not present in heterosexual relationships. So again, as a qualitative researcher, I'm sure you'll be able to account for that, but do you have any particular thoughts on it?
So the way that I could foresee it coming up in my research is that there's sort of like an introductory interview conducted where I learn and we discuss what is actually relevant for that couple, and that's what they discuss and what's sort of analyzed in the research. So whatever they discuss, so it's actually like an observational type study where they're actually having a conversation. Whatever they choose to discuss is something that's relevant to them. So if these themes, like if it's a new couple or if it's somebody who's experimenting with their sexuality, they would have the option to discuss whatever is actually most relevant to them. So I may not ask them to talk about that because it may not be of relevance to everyone. But what they discuss will be something that is the most relevant, they feel, to what they're currently working through in their sexual relationship. So,
Okay. Thank you.
thanks.
Hi, I'm curious to know what your definition of sexual couple is, because my understanding in the gay community that a 24-hour relationship exists, as well as serial monogamy. So what were the parameters of what you call a couple? And a second question is, which is probably easier to answer, is when you're using the term sexual communication, are you only talking about verbal communications, or are you also talking about nonverbal methods of communicating, which is probably more of a pickup thing than a couples thing, but
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah, no, really great questions. Thank you. So I'll start with the second one, if that's okay. Sexual communication, there are very different and varying broad definitions. For the purpose of this study, because there's going to be a couple engaging in a sexual conversation, and that's going to be the topic or the data that's going to be analyzed. So it's going to be verbal and nonverbal information. Things like sexting and stuff like that, unless it's spoken about in the conversation, won't be analyzed in the study. And as far as what I'm defining as a couple, I haven't called out for participants. I haven't set exclusion criteria yet, but I will be looking at somewhat established couples. So I'm right now it's 1 year, and we're discussing whether or not open relationships or monogamy is something that I want to consider. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for your presentation, Matthew. I guess I just want to pose a challenge either to you to keep trying to engage the folks who are working in HIV prevention, or maybe it's a challenge to us to try to engage you in your work, because I think you're very correct when you say that most of the research is it's not focusing on pleasure, and it's not focusing on that huge component, and we know that there is a relationship between that and our sexual behavior, and of course our mental health and all of that, and you're right, we're very focused on risks. So I think as your research unfolds, hopefully we'll be able to utilize that to also prevent HIV.
Thank you. And I do want to note that most of the work that I'm grabbing from is from health sciences, so that the purpose is very much to understand the HIV prevention angle. And I'm coming from counseling psychology. It's two very different approaches, and my argument is that they both should exist and be there to really round out the literature. So I'm hoping it came across that I'm definitely not saying that there shouldn't be this HIV research. I don't want you to leave thinking that. Thank you.
So inspired by one of the persons asked a question before, because he talked about the different type of sexual communication and draw what I was presenting yesterday about intimate partner violence. So will you integrate the intimate partner violence, like the sexual assault, like within the relationships, and how will you navigate that? Because it will be really hard to make one of the partners disclose if they are having an abusive relationship or something.
Right. So, sorry, are you asking if I'm going to be breaching that?
Yeah, because it's a huge part of the sexual communication. Because what he inspired me to talk about was like consent. Because he was talking about if nonverbal sexual communication. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this may be, and I'll obviously have a better answer once I've done the research. But by keeping it very open and allowing the couple to talk about what is relevant for them, these themes very well may come up. But I'm not sure that I can't say for certain.
Like, will you only use methods like what Sophia would mention earlier? Like, will you only give them a group interview, or you're gonna like potentially offer them like individual interviews? Things like the topic what I mentioned or Jody mentioned, like this risk factors may not that easy to come out during a couple session. Am I making sense?
So you're concerned that they may not come out of this conversation?
Yeah, if it's a couple interview, right?
Right, and that's very possible. This is just going to be, a 20 to 30 minute snapshot of what it looks like when they communicate about sex. And I'm really looking at the process of how they negotiate their sexual communication and how they talk to one another. So it's very likely that important themes of their sexual relationships won't be discussed and therefore won't be analyzed yet. So potential information may be missing for sure.
I have a question.
Quickly.
Sorry, I'm sort of interested in how you're saying that you said you're going to do interviews.
So
I'm just curious, like, which methods qualitatively, so you say it seems qualitative very loosely, in a sense, like, what qualitative method are you using? Because, like how you're saying that at 30 minutes you really can't get a full picture, have you thought about, like, journaling or something like that, so then they can get those intimate stories from, like, maybe over a certain amount of period, you can be like, oh, this one time X happened when my partner was with Y.
Yeah. So I'm using the qualitative action project method, which has a set of specific exercises that are done, and it is actually, when used in its entirety, a longitudinal method. And there is journaling in between the different interviews. However, as advised by my supervisor, that this is just a master's thesis and that I need to graduate at some point. We're just looking at the actual, the dyadic conversation, and there's a follow-up interview after. So they have a dyadic conversation, and then I have an interview with each of the participants where we watch the video that they had, we watch a video of the discussion that they had, pause at about 1 minute intervals, and ask questions like, what were you feeling during this point in the conversation? What was your intention behind that statement? Different things like that to unpack the process of their sexual communication.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for the question.